It's time that we rank some techniques in JJK, but more specifically, I want to rank the 4 times maximum output was used in a technique. That said, to properly rank when our cast used a technique to its maximum output, we have to go over some key factors, such as who was using it, what that technique actually does, how much stronger did it get at maximum output, and lastly, what did it ultimately accomplish? But before we get into any of that, I need a favor from you guys. Do me a favor and like the video, as it helps with this YouTube algorithm that we also love. Also, if you see the hype button on my video, go ahead and press that for me, alright? Subscribe to the channel because you know me, I love to go ahead and discuss these JJK topics with you guys in the comments below. And also, hit the noti bell because we do a lot of posting here, shorts and long videos, so I don't want you to miss a video. Hit that noti bell. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the 4 times these maximum output techniques were used in JJK, ranked and explained. Okay, before we rank anything, you need to understand that we need to go over the topic at hand, which is a maximum output technique. I don't like calling it that because at the end of the day, it's not a technique. It's an extension technique used at maximum output, which is different from a maximum technique. You really do not want to compare the two because a maximum technique is far different from a maximum output technique. So let's break down exactly what a maximum output is when it's applied to a technique, right? Applying maximum output to a technique is just using the maximum amount of cursed energy that you can use on that technique itself. And to do that, you need to understand what an extension technique or an application of a technique is. So we all know that you are born with your curse technique, and your curse technique manifests around the age of 5 or 6, right? So what you get is either an innate technique, which is a technique that nobody has had in the past. Maybe they did, but it's not going through your bloodline. So your kids or your grandkids are probably not going to have that same technique, because if they did, it would be called an inherited technique, which if it is an inherited technique, that means somebody in your bloodline in the past has had it. Maybe your father, maybe your grandfather, maybe your mom, maybe your grandma, something like that, right? Maybe a couple generations ago, somebody had the same technique. 10 Shadows technique is the same thing, inherited technique. Think about Toto's Boogie Woogie. That's an innate technique. Nobody else has had it as far as we know. Probably somebody deep in the past has had it, because I can't imagine that all these techniques nobody's ever had in the past. But more than likely, it is that nobody's ever had it, and it's an innate technique at that point. So whether it's an innate technique or an inherited technique, it doesn't matter. You can have an extension technique built off of that curse technique. So what an extension technique is, I'll give you a couple examples, right? We'll use Gojo for this example. So Gojo's inherited technique is the Limitless. However, he has multiple different applications or extensions of the Limitless. He has 4 specifically, that being Infinity, Blue, Red, and Purple. So the Limitless is the curse technique. The extension techniques are those 4, Infinity, Blue, Red, and Purple. And now that you have a gist of what an extension technique is to your curse technique, now this is where you apply maximum output, because you can't apply maximum output to your curse technique in general, right? But an extension technique, a specific portion of your curse technique where you are specifically doing something with that technique, like using blue to attract 2 different factors to one another, because that's all blue does, right? It attracts one person or one object to another person or another object. You can apply maximum output to that technique to give it the most amount of cursed energy and most potential that technique can have to do whatever it is it's supposed to do. So if you use maximum output blue, that's what you're inherently doing there. You guys got it? Cool. Now we're going to rank them, because now you understand what we're talking about. So now we could get into actually ranking these techniques. And again, there's only 4 of them, so probably a short video, right? All right, let's get into number 4 of maximum outputs ever used in JJK. And we're going to start off with Frostcom. So Urame is the person that uses Frostcom, but more specifically, Urame has Ice Formation, which is the curse technique that allows them to control ice. And Frostcom is an extension technique of Ice Formation. So when it comes to mid-range powerful attacks in JJK, you're probably not going to find one as powerful as Frostcom. And the reason for it is because Frostcom essentially is a prison and also an attack all at the same time. And it's nearly impossible to really dodge unless you're using cursed energy in your eyes all the time in order to see this attack coming. Which, I mean, realistically speaking, all Jujutsu sorcerers should be. But to the average person, at least to our cast at the end of season 2, they were not expecting Frostcom to hit them because it looked like they could not dodge it whatsoever when they were one-track minded to attack Kenjaku. Yeah, no, this was unavoidable here. And the reason it's so unavoidable is because the user's blowing chilled cursed energy in a cloud of mist. So I don't know about you, but a cloud of mist doesn't really seem like that visible even when using cursed energy on your eyes in order to see an attack like that coming, right? But they can guide this breath of mist basically with their hand in order to target somebody specifically. Now, it's more of a mid-range attack because it doesn't travel very far, but when it does hit you, you become imprisoned in ice. And this ice is no joke because this ice causes you to basically shred your body apart if you try to move too much or just move once in the wrong way. Now, you understand how I just said it's better used for mid-range combat? Yeah, throw that away at maximum output because at maximum output, this covers multiple city blocks. And you're going to see that in Season 4 of JJK because JJK was announced that Season 3, Part 1, yeah, that's Part 1 of the Cullen games. There's not going to be a Season 3, Part 2. There's going to be Season 4 next. And that's Part 2 of the Cullen games is Season 4. So Season 4 of JJK, you're going to see Frostcom used at the highest level it could be used. And it's going to cover multiple city blocks when it attacks 2 sorcerers that we are very familiar with. And at this point where you're using maximum output, it's basically super chilled or super cooled. So you're not going to be able to survive this attack, or at least probably not, because at this point, if you move in the Frostcom, you're guaranteed to rip yourself apart. So it's just inherently just a death blow at that point. But what did it actually accomplish? Unfortunately, not much, because the 2 sorcerers who I will not name were up against another sorcerer at this point in Season 4. And let's just say that at the highest level, you can maybe vouch that the sorcerer that was on a 2v1 at this point, and my manga readers know who it was, that person maybe got saved by Rama using Frostcom at this point because it separated them from the battle and it basically made it that the battle had to end. However, that's a massive stretch. So I would not go on that wagon and say that happened. I would just say that, hey, it separated the 2 people from fighting the one person, and apparently the battle had to end because the narrative needed the battle to end. So that's Frostcom at maximum output. That's why it's coming in at number 4, because we only saw it the one time being used, and realistically it just was used at that point to separate those individuals. So not the craziest thing ever. So moving on to number 3, we're gonna move on to Choso and Narutoshi Kamo's blood manipulation, flowing red scale, stack. Now, a lot of people are going to say, wait, you didn't say maximum output, you said stack. Stack isn't a maximum output. It actually is. All right, you can use stack interchangeable with maximum output because we see flowing red scale used and we see stack used. Now, the reason Choso said the word stack instead of maximum output, I would dare say it's because he was made 150 years ago, I believe is how long they were made. So Choso being made 150 years ago, they probably use different dialect, or maybe it's just the wording is different. I don't know. You got to remember, like, some people were born years apart from each other. So like Kenjaku, for example, was born 1200 years ago, or roughly in that ballpark. So it's like, you can't expect them to use the same dialect all the time. The only reason the inherited sorcerers use the same words as modern sorcerers are realistically because they were allowed to get the memories of the person whose body they took over. So they understood the common phrases that people use so that they wouldn't be super confused, and so that the rules of the Cullen games could make sense to everybody, basically. So it's interchangeable. Don't get too caught up on the wording, all right? You're going to complicate it for yourself. But flowing red scale stack, some people are going to say it's not as powerful as Ice Formation Frostcom, especially because Choso got stuck in it, and then he used flowing red scale to start breaking himself out of it. I mean, right there and then, I would say it's a little bit stronger than it. But you're going to probably want to argue me on here. But let me break it down why I think it's a little bit better than Frostcom. So when you're using blood manipulation and you choose to use flowing red scale, not only is it going to make it that you skip the training arc and that you become basically a master of hand-to-hand combat, not really, you still need to know how to fight, but you really do pick up on speed, strength, your agility increases, your ability to see attacks coming increase, like all that increases inherently because of what Flowing Red Scale does, because it increases your blood temperature, it increases the number of red blood cells in your body, and it also increases your pulse. Now what that does is it gives you more blood in your body, it makes it that you are able to move faster and to become stronger, kind of breaking the barrier of your peak strength, because ultimately we as humans will never use our peak strength. So you're probably going to use maybe 60 or 70% of your peak strength at whenever you're trying to use your strength. But the body has inhibitors in it, kind of like how Rock Lee has those inhibitors in him to use the 8 gates. That's a real thing where if you broke through those inhibitors in your body mentally, then what happens is you could tear muscle off of bones. So that's a real thing. So if you ever try to use 100% of your strength, like if your brain actually allowed you to, you would be tearing muscle from bone in order to use that strength. So the body does not allow that to happen. But using Flowing Red Scale, you can access that level of strength. So stack basically means that you access it at 120% capacity, right? Now, it's not 100% put out there that's 120%, but that's a little bit of my headcanon that you're basically at 120% strength at that point when it's maximum output. If Flowing Red Scale is allowing you to get close to 100%, at least maybe 80, 85, 90%. You also get these markings, these blood markings around your eyes when you activate the technique, and it looks different for everybody, but I mean, realistically, we've only seen Naruto Shikamo and Choso use it. I don't think we saw a blood manipulation user in Modulo use it. I don't think there was a blood manipulation user outside of Yuji realistically in Modulos. Yeah, I don't want to say anybody else, but Choso and Naruto Shikamo has these markings. But if you were to use it, you would also have some markings around your eyes as well. Now, when you're using Flowing Red Scale stack, I'm not saying that you're reaching the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and physical peakness, right? I'm not saying your physical prowess, your speed, all that is maximized to the point where you're matching Toji or Maki at Heavenly Restriction. However, I will say that you are matching Yuji in Season 2 at his monstrous level of peak strength and speed. Now, Season 3 opening Yuji is already way stronger than Season 2 Yuji because he was able to recover a little bit of his strength. And also, Sukuna has become stronger at this point. So, I'm actually one of those guys who will argue that Yuji wasn't going to beat Mahito at the end of Season 2 if Sukuna didn't get those extra fingers put in him. Because, realistically speaking, Yuji's strength does increase when Sukuna has more fingers. And we do see the transition from Season 1 to Season 2 when Yuji does consume more Sukuna fingers. It pretty much translates to his body getting that muscle memory of what the strength feels like when Sukuna had his power restored, basically. And yes, I would say that Flowing Red Scale stack prior to Yuji getting an extra 10 fingers from Jogo and the girls. Prior to that, those 11 fingers being put in Yuji, I would say that Flowing Red Scale stack is matched to a 4-finger Sukunen level of strength when it comes to physical strength, speed. And the reason for it too is because of the oxygen increases in the body when you're stacked. So you're basically heightening your levels even greater. Like there is actual science behind what stack does to your body. So what did this actually accomplish? Well, I could just say straight up that Choso has a 100% win rate when he uses Flowing Red Scale stack, because he did defeat Naoya by using this technique to increase the blood cells in his eyes in order to track Naoya's movements. So he was able to see a speedster moving incredibly fast in front of him and react to him using projection sorcery. He was able to react to Naoya. So I would say right there and then, that's very impressive because it just makes it that you can react to a speedster in JJK. And also he was able to defeat Yuji in his own turf, that being close quarter combat, in an external environment that was not advantageous to Choso's kit. The reason I say that is because the water was dispelling all of the blood that was outside of Choso's body, so he had to rely on what was inside his body. So using Flowing Red Scale stack at that point was very advantageous to Choso because he could still control the blood inside of his body, but he couldn't make any weapons or anything like that. Now, he was able to use Meteorite at that point to win the fight versus Yuji, but some may say he didn't need to do that, right? But I mean, if you find a way to win, you might as well take it, especially in JJK. Now, following Choso's technique, we have a technique that some of you are probably going to say this should be number 1 because Gojo uses it. And if Gojo uses it, it has to be number 1, right? Well, not every single time, because following Flowing Red Scale stack is going to be Cursed Technique Lapse Blue. So Blue is our number 2 entry in maximum outputs used on extension techniques. And the reason I say that is because Blue is a very complicated technique, and it's very good at maximum output, but it's just not the best. Now, Satoru Gojo and someone else who I won't name uses this technique, and it's a huge spoiler, so I'm not going to talk more about it than this, but blue is the extension technique to the limitless as we used in our previous example, and I'm going to try to explain this in the simplest form possible so that you guys don't get confused about what Gojo was doing here. So Gojo's technique allows him to control cursed energy at atomic level. The Six Eyes allows him to actually see these atoms, so he does know what he's doing when he's using the limitless, because if he didn't have both, he was not going to be able to do anything that he could do. And because he's Gojo, he has a little bit of finesse to what he does, so he makes it look pretty smooth, right? But it's actually a very difficult thing what he's doing, because he's controlling atoms in somebody's body or in an object in order to use blue, because blue attracts two individual things to one another. Now, he can use this in multiple different capacities. He can use blue in order to create a black hole-like attack. He can use blue to travel very far distances that could take hours to travel. He could just use it on himself and an object somewhere else, or just a location, and basically warp himself to that object by using the atoms in his body, attract them to the atoms at that location, and the distance just gets simplified like this. So that's basically what he's doing with blue. He's basically just trying to let atoms travel at incredible speeds to get to one another. So to us, it looks like he's a speedster. In the laws of physics, he's just moving atoms from here and here. He's making one of them come to the other. So if he wants to come to you, right? And he could just use this on his fist, right? So if your face is here, his fist is here, and he wants the atoms from his fist to connect to your face, he can make it look like it happened in a nanosecond just by bringing them together, right? So blue can be used in multiple different capacities. However, the way Gojo uses it in maximum output is devastating. So if you're using blue at maximum output, you're basically creating something akin to a black hole. And the reason I say that is because blue at maximum output collects so many atoms in one area trying to attract everything that it's gonna make, one, things implode, two, it's going to literally create a black hole like substance that just destroys everything it comes across. And we've seen this used twice, right? We've seen it used in the Sukuna fight at the end of the story, and we've seen it used versus Toji Fushiguro, who was very rusty at this point, but it cleared out all the land and all the infrastructure around Gojo, where it made it that Toji had nowhere to hide until he brought out his own fly heads, and then that was different, right? Now, Gojo did think about using blue one more time at this point, which he should have, honestly, because it would have cleared everything out and just made it that he had the advantage again, but he got distracted in the fight, and that's typically what happens with Gojo, and that's typically how he gets sealed or beat in a fight. Now, it is a little bit less impressive to me personally what he did accomplish with blue at maximum output, at least in the Toji Fushiguro fight, but he was exhausted and he's been using his infinity plus the Six Eyes, and plus it wasn't mastered at this point. So I can't really put that against him because he was a kid still learning his technique and he didn't have his domain expansion at that point. It really wouldn't have mattered versus Toji. Honestly, if he used his domain expansion, it probably would have been a worse fate for Gojo, but I can't hold that against him. To me, blue is just more of a destructive and powerful technique, so you can't really let Flow and Red Scale stack or Frost Calm go over it. So yeah, blue is coming in at our number 2 entry, and if you guys want it at number 1, feel free to put in number 1 in your list. Now, for our number 1 entry, I have to talk about somebody who we're going to see use this technique in Season 4, and it is insane. So maximum output Jacob's Ladder is absolutely insane of a curse technique. So Jacob's Ladder is the extension technique to extinguishment used by Angel / Hana, because they're basically the same person, kind of in a Yuji and Sukuna mix with the body. Now, technique extinguishment completely nullifies and negates any other curse technique. It doesn't matter if we're talking about barriers, if we're talking about objects, tools, techniques, it doesn't matter. If technique extinguishment is activated, which Jacob's Ladder is the extension to that, and you get hit with it, there goes your technique. It's bye-bye. So the way this technique works is a 4-winged trumpet appears that the user is going to blow into, right? And then out of nowhere in the sky, this huge magical circle that turns into a heptagram appears in the sky, and that's where the technique is going to come from. It's going to just shoot down this huge ray of light onto the object or the target that you have chosen. Now, without spoiling the story to anybody, I cannot say what or who it was used on multiple times. But let me just say, it gets crazy because it is used multiple times throughout the story on, I guess you could say, good guys and bad guys. And it's very devastating. And there you go. That is the definitive list of maximum outputs used on extension techniques in JJK. Only 4 times. I wish we saw more, especially in Modulo. I'm surprised we didn't see a maximum output used in Modulo, but I guess that was more of a separate story, I guess, if you want to call it that. Otherwise, have a great day. Please stay safe out there because the world is crazy right now, and I will see you guys in the next video.